When you work on BMW motorcycles, it is inevitable you end up with two or three of the same model at the same time. This is a story of one of those cases. Three R90 S's all together. This is a story about one of these two Daytona Orange bikes. This one from Florida. Here's the customer's letter.
Chris, this 1976 R90 S had a total restoration done by Hacks BMW in 2007. All of the Hacks BMW repair order invoices are attached. The first time I took it out after it was finished, I rode it about 40 miles. At that point it was running rough and wouldn't hold an idle, stalling out when I stopped. I have continued to have this problem ever since. I have brought the motorcycle back to them several times. They do try very hard to be helpful, but they do not seem to be able to find the problem. Finally, this summer, I decided to work on the motorcycle myself. I did one thing at a time. I have not been able to correct the problem despite everything I have tried, including the cost to buy this motorcycle several years ago, the cost of a Hacks BMW restoration and a paint job by Ken Holt. I have almost $20,000 into this motorcycle. I also own another 1976 BMW R90 S, never restored, a 1983 R100 RS, never restored, and both run much better than this one with the problem. When the motorcycle is cold, it runs the best. By the time I ride at about 25 to 30 miles, it is running rough and has an erratic idle. It runs roughest below 3,000 RPM and between 4,200 to 4,800 RPM. But even at that sweet spot, it starts to run rougher after it warms up. I have rebuilt the carburetors. Even though they had been rebuilt by Hacks BMW during the restoration, I sent the DeLordo carburetors to Bing International in Kansas, where a man named Charlie is regarded as an expert and rebuilds Bings and DeLordos. Before I sent them out to Bing, I bought a pair of brand new PHM38 carbs from Bing and used them while mine were being rebuilt. I experienced the problem described above before any carb work, then when using the brand new carbs, and finally after I put my original carbs back on the motorcycle, when Charlie returned them. I feel it may be okay to assume this is not a carb problem. Additionally, I use a very good carburetor balancer called a Synchromate 2.
This bike had issues. I spent a bit of time on it, and the vibration in the right foot peg was horrendous. You couldn't ride this bike more than 3 or 4 miles, and your foot would go numb. Something was severely wrong with this engine. And with a little bit of investigating and poking around, I find that there's a lot of things wrong with this bike, and it's been into a couple of hands already and requests for opinions, and it sounds like the basis of, legal actions going on. So nobody really wants to get mired into that kind of misery in this motorcycle world. There wasn't anything I could do with this bike. This was beyond the realms of fix it and get you back on the road. This was, correcting a very expensive restoration. Something perhaps was missed. So then you're on a hunting spree, trying to find what was missed, changing parts, hoping for the best. I don't have time for that kind of thing, not when the schedule is full of people waiting to continue riding their motorcycles that are functioning. So this is another one of those jobs where you kind of have to cut your losses and say, I'm sorry, I can't continue, and you send it home. And that was the end of that bike. This other one, if you want to stick around for another 5 minutes, I'll tell you all about this bike, which was a New Hampshire bike and has an interesting story.
Hi Chris, here's the repair history of my bike for you. I bought the bike April 26, 1977, off the showroom floor. I broke it in, as per book directions, with 100 to 270 mile trips, using GTX oil. Oil has been changed every 500 to 1,000 miles, filter every 1,000 miles. In 1979 we tightened the steering head nut because the bike shook on heavy bumps. In June 1982, at Animal Hill during Bike Week, a guy with a machete slashed my seat and nicked the fork tubes. Both tubes were polished, and new BMW fork seals were installed. The nose of the starter broke in 1988, and I replaced it. Around 1990, a bent valve was replaced in the right side head. The seat was ground by the Ducati dealer. The left side head has never been removed. The light switch quit 8 years ago. I tried to fix it, and kept blowing fuses. There was an extra wire I could not figure out where it went. Second wind fixed it for me. 5 or 6 years ago, while trying to jump-start the bike in the spring, the connecting jumpers slipped, and we shorted out the charging system. Burned diodes, resistors, etc. were replaced. Last year the bike started stalling at intersections, running on only one cylinder. Left side was quitting. I tried carburetor cleaner and adjusting the valves, but it's still running rough. The compression test showed one cylinder at 115 pounds and one at 114 pounds. That's pretty much all that's ever been done to my bike. I hope you can get it going again, Jack.
Will it run? I was going to say, when it started, it stopped leaking.
So the carburetors drip. We're running on one cylinder. We know the compression is good, at least according to the customer. The carb's dripping on the brake pedal on the right side. We certainly know the right side carburetor needs attention because it's dripping on the lift while the bike isn't running. And the carb over on the left side is dripping on the shift rubber, and that's split. So we know the carb on the left side needs attention too, and that side's not firing. This has Delorto carbs. These are not quite as simple to go through as the Bing carburetors fitted to the other models. There's also quite a bit of parts involved in this. These carbs particularly are expensive to rebuild. They're time consuming, there's a lot of parts, there's a lot involved in setting them up properly once they're fitted to the machine. Here we have our carbs all cleaned up, ready to be fitted back to the machine. We're into the front end. We heard about the machete attack on Animal Hill during Bike Week back in 1982. Well, here's some rust pitting on the stanchion tubes as well. But we're not going to worry too much about that. We're going to replace the steering head bearings because the grease in these is rock hard and you can barely turn the bars left and right. And he had already complained about a head shake early on in the bike's life. It was about 3 years old or so. We're going to get into the steering head bearings. When you do that on one of these models without a full fairing, all of your headlight and turn signals are mounted to the triple clamps. Makes the job more difficult. You can expect 2 additional hours labor on an unfaired BMW versus a faired BMW when it comes to steering head bearing replacement. Here the new races are set in. We have our new bearings installed. Where this bike's going back together. The front end's back on. It's looking good. Time for the petcocks. Those don't look so good. Yuck. Fix for that, of course, is a couple of new petcocks, some new fuel hose, and the bike is coming together. Our carbs are on, our valves are adjusted.
That's better. That has no throttle. It's done.
Thank you for watching and supporting my video work.